Welcome to the Museum of Australian Democracy at Old Parliament House. Over the course of several weeks, the Museum of Australian Democracy has hosted 3 free events featuring well-known Australians who've shared their thoughts and hopes on some of the hottest topics shaping our democracy today. Tonight's conversation will focus on the topic freedom of speech and censorship. How free are we?
We are the freest country in the world, but, if you don't like it, leave. I've heard that phrase countless times. The nerve to criticise our country is criticising all we stand for. It is criticising the sacrifice that the diggers made for our country. The extreme opinions on any given issue are the essential sort of voices that have to be heard in order to kind of define the middle. If you believe in anything, you've got to express it because you've got to drag those beliefs, you've got to drag the middle a bit closer to you. You have to kind of redefine what that middle is by, expressing those extremities. And as artists, we kind of do that a lot. Our tolerance is something that I think we should be really proud of, but it's also something that is quite vulnerable. We don't have secret police, but we have secret files, and we don't have death squads, but we have smear campaigns. And inevitably, in they swoop. These politicians who are hungry for profile, they want to establish their moral credentials. I see these type of issues as a free kick, like a goodwill voucher you can cash in at Middle Australia, a vote winner. So the discussion is over before it began. And it doesn't really matter where you stand on the issue. You can have polarised opinions. What really matters is that it's thoroughly debated.
A concentrated media ownership is an indirect form of censorship we face today. When a handful of conglomerates can own the majority of the media, it is the bosses that can dictate their own information firewall on what's important and how it can be framed. Any concentration of power does not help future-proofing our democracy against corruption, which brings the censorship discussion to the mandatory internet filter proposed for Australia. We hear about cyberbullying, identity theft, online child predators. These terms come up in the media. The government understands the fear in the community and is tackling the problem with a mandatory internet filter. Now, while this gives the illusion that this is tackling the risks children face online, it does not address these key concerns that Conroy himself presented when the filter was proposed. The main problems children are facing is containing the human interaction on the internet, and that's something that this filter cannot stop. While the list is to cover child porn, bestiality, it can also cover content deemed illegal. While today this may cover graffiti instruction videos, maybe in a couple of years' time it will cover abortion, euthanasia, or to give a dire scenario, news websites or an oppositional party's website. What does this mean if the government has the technology in place to control the information flow? I'm a parent, but I hear alarm bells when politicians start talking about protecting our young children. I'm trying to protect my children from politicians, especially when they try to kiss them in shopping centres. So with freedom comes responsibility. And the internet is not always responsible. There are bad things on the net. However, I believe that the government should be enabling parents to deal with it instead of with opt-in censorship in a transparent fashion.
I'm just wanted to talk as far as censorship goes as to our quite unusual experience with The Herd, I think. We began the band in around 2000, 2001. September 11 had occurred, and we were involved in Howard's Children Overboard debacle. So it wasn't a deliberate attempt on our part to say no one is talking about these issues. We feel like someone should. It was a topic that was close to our hearts at the time and we thought was interesting and important. So we wrote a song called 77%. It was actually the number of people that agreed with the Liberal government's policy on immigration at the time and the Pacific solution. We were expecting to be censored, and we had self-censored ourselves for the benefit of the message, because we thought it's better to get this out there in an edited form and still get the message across. But it seemed to be embraced wholeheartedly by the ABC. That was the environment that we were living in, sort of post-September 11, and self-censorship was very much the rage amongst artists of all forms. As we have been talking about, I think it is the role of artists to push those boundaries and to make people question themselves and occasionally be deliberately inflammatory. I think that can be beneficial, and yeah, hopefully we've got some more. We'll come up with something else in the near future and try and offend you all.